There comes a moment in every person's life when they look into the mirror and feel something subtle yet unsettling. Not a wrinkle, not a gray hair, but a quiet heaviness behind the eyes. A sense that something inside has grown older before its time. Most people blame the clock, the calendar, or their lifestyle. But what if the real culprit is something far more intimate? What if your own thoughts are aging you from the inside out? This idea sounds dramatic, even unbelievable, yet both ancient Buddhist wisdom and cutting-edge modern biology point to the same truth. Your mind may be influencing your aging process more than time itself. The Buddha hinted at this over 2,000 years ago when he said, "What you think, you become." For centuries, people treated this as philosophical poetry. But today, neuroscientists, psychologists, and cellular biologists are discovering that he meant this quite literally. Thoughts create chemistry. Emotions create hormonal patterns. The inner narrative creates the outer biology. And once you understand how this works, you will see aging and your own health through a completely new lens. To understand the connection between your thoughts and your body, imagine yourself walking through a serene Zen monastery in the mountains of Japan just before sunrise. The air is crisp. The sky is pale. Monks move in slow, mindful steps across stone pathways washed clean by the night wind. Their faces are calm, unstrained, almost luminous. They do not look young in a cosmetic way. They look young in a biological way, as if their bodies learned how to age without breaking down. Scientists studying long-term meditators often find that they have younger biological markers, stronger immune systems, healthier hearts, slower cellular aging, and remarkably resilient minds. What makes them different? They live in alignment with a principle the modern world ignores. The mind is the first biological environment the body lives in. When the mind is tense, the environment is toxic. When the mind is peaceful, the environment is healing. Inside your body, at the end of every chromosome, tiny structures called telomeres protect your DNA. Think of them as the plastic caps at the end of shoelaces that keep them from fraying. The longer your telomeres are, the younger your cells remain. When telomeres shorten too quickly, your cells weaken faster and aging accelerates. What shortens telomeres most rapidly is not time. It's chronic stress, mental tension, and emotional turbulence. And what lengthens them, remarkably, is inner peace, meditation, mindful breathing, and emotional balance. This is not theory. This is measurable biology. When the Buddha taught that the mind creates suffering, he was also describing how the mind quietly creates inflammation, immune dysfunction, hormonal imbalance, and cellular breakdown. Think for a moment about how your body reacts when you are stressed. Your heart rate rises. Your digestion slows. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your muscles tighten. Your sleep becomes disturbed. Your cortisol levels spike. Your brain shifts into survival mode. If this happened once in a while, it wouldn't be a problem. But in the modern world, most people stay in this state for days, weeks, sometimes years. They wake up worried. They go through the day rushed. They go to bed anxious. And their body, loyal to the mind, follows its cues. It keeps preparing for danger even when no danger exists. That is how thoughts age you, not through imagination, but through chemistry. Let me share a story. Years ago, a CEO from New York attended a 10-day meditation retreat in Thailand. He was constantly wired: emails, meetings, negotiations, deadlines. His body carried the tension of a lifetime. His doctor warned him that he was on the edge of serious burnout. When he arrived at the retreat, his jaw clenched even in silence. His shoulders were stiff. His eyes looked exhausted beyond his age. The monks observed him gently. They have seen this before. In the modern world, stress is almost worn like armor, but inside it quietly cuts into the body. On the second day, during walking meditation, the CEO suddenly began to cry. Not from sadness, but from the shock of stillness. For the first time in years, his mind stopped running long enough for him to feel what he had been carrying. By the end of the retreat, something beautiful happened. The tension from his face softened, his posture straightened, his voice became calm. He returned home looking visibly younger. His doctor was stunned. His blood pressure had normalized. His cortisol levels dropped. His sleep improved dramatically. His mood stabilized. When asked what medication he had taken, he smiled and said, "I stopped arguing with my mind." That simple shift, learning to stop fighting internal battles, reversed years of biological wear. This is the power the Buddha spoke of, the power science is now measuring. Your mind is like a garden. If you leave it alone, weeds of fear and negativity spread. If you feed it anxious thoughts, the soil becomes toxic. But if you cultivate awareness, if you watch your thoughts without drowning in them, your inner landscape becomes peaceful, spacious, and healing. Meditation is not an escape from life. It is a return to yourself. It trains your brain to step out of survival mode and into presence. It teaches your nervous system how to switch from fight or flight into rest and repair. It lowers cortisol, stabilizes heart rate, improves sleep, strengthens the immune system, and slows aging at the cellular level. Every mindful breath is like a small repair done inside your body. Modern neuroscience shows that your brain is constantly changing through neuroplasticity. Every thought you repeat creates pathways. Stressful thoughts create stressed pathways. Peaceful thoughts create peaceful pathways. Over time, your brain becomes shaped by the thoughts you feed it. Buddhist monks speak of this using different language. They call it karma, not as punishment or reward, but as the simple truth that your inner actions shape your outer reality. Science simply gave it new names: neuroplasticity, epigenetics, psychoneuroimmunology. Different words, same wisdom. Think about how many thoughts you have in a day, and how many of them are automatic. Most of your stress is not caused by life itself, but by the story you tell yourself about life. A single memory, repeated in your mind, can trigger the same stress response your body felt years ago. A single worry about the future can create the same fear as real danger. The body reacts not to truth, but to perception. It cannot distinguish between a real threat and a thought about a threat. That is why awareness is everything. When you learn to observe your thoughts instead of believing all of them, you break the cycle. You interrupt the chemistry of suffering. Imagine a lake at dawn. The surface is still, reflecting the sky. This lake is your mind in its natural state, calm, clear, open. Now imagine throwing stones into the lake every few seconds. The ripples distort the reflection. This is the mind under stress. The ripples are your thoughts. Most people throw stones all day long without realizing it, but the lake is capable of becoming still again the moment you stop disturbing it. Peace is not something you create. It is something you return to. As part 1 ends, let this truth settle within you. Your thoughts are not harmless. They shape your biology. They influence your aging. They condition your hormones. They guide your immune system. They sculpt your cells. But this is not a warning. It is freedom. Because if thoughts can harm, they can also heal. If stress can accelerate aging, awareness can slow it down. If suffering can shorten life, inner peace can lengthen it. Stress is often spoken about casually, as if it were just a feeling, a passing wave of tension that eventually dissolves. But in truth, stress is a biochemical event, a storm that begins in the mind and strikes through every tissue of the body. It is invisible, yet powerful enough to change the speed at which you age. When a stressful thought appears, the body does not wait to see if the threat is real. It reacts instantly, preparing itself for battle. The heart tightens, the breath shortens, hormones surge, muscles brace themselves. And in these moments, the body is living as if survival itself is at stake. The tragedy of the modern world is not that people experience stress. Humans have always faced difficulty. The tragedy is that stress has become constant. It follows people to work, into their homes, into their sleep, into their dreams. Even silence is filled with noise, a worrying thought about tomorrow, a memory from the past that refuses to fade, an imagined scenario that triggers fear. The body cannot distinguish between memory, imagination, and reality. Every one of them sends the same signal: prepare to fight, prepare to run, prepare to survive. And what was once a temporary response becomes a permanent way of living. Deep inside your cells, tiny engines called mitochondria do the work of keeping you alive. They produce energy, repair tissues, clear toxins, and maintain balance. But when stress becomes chronic, these engines begin to falter. They generate excess oxidants, small molecules that behave like sparks, damaging DNA, weakening cell walls, and accelerating wear and tear. Scientists call this oxidative stress, but the Buddha described it in a more poetic way. A mind unguarded burns like a fire. The fire he spoke of is not merely emotional, it is biological. One fascinating discovery in modern biology reveals how quickly the body responds to the mind. When a person experiences calm, their parasympathetic nervous system activates, slowing aging by allowing the body to enter a state of repair. When a person experiences stress, the opposite system takes over and shuts down long-term maintenance. The body, in that moment, is not interested in longevity or healing. It prioritizes survival. If this cycle continues for years, the body simply never gets the chance to repair itself. The result is premature aging, not just of the skin, but of the heart, the brain, and the immune system. Consider the story of a woman named Claire, a schoolteacher from California. For years, she carried stress quietly, almost silently. She smiled through her responsibilities, cared for her students, and pushed herself through exhaustion. But inside her body, a different story was unfolding. She often felt drained, older than her age, as if some invisible weight pressed on her constantly. One day, during a mindfulness workshop she reluctantly attended, she experienced something unexpected. During a simple breathing exercise, she realized how tightly she had been holding her breath for years without even noticing. It was as if her body had been waiting for permission to relax. Over the next few weeks, Claire began practicing 5 minutes of mindful breathing every morning. Nothing dramatic, nothing intense, just 5 minutes of awareness, feeling her breath as it came and went. Within a month, her sleep improved. Her digestion calmed, her face softened. She felt lighter, not emotionally, but biologically, as if her cells were finally exhaling. When she went for her routine medical checkup, her doctor noticed something remarkable. Her inflammatory markers had dropped significantly. The fatigue she had struggled with for years began to dissolve. It wasn't magic, it was biology responding to peace. The Buddhist teachings often use the metaphor of a lute. If the strings are too tight, the instrument breaks. If the strings are too loose, the instrument produces no sound. Stress is like overly tight strings. The body cannot sustain such tension without consequences. The mind becomes rigid, reactive, restless. The heart becomes overworked. The digestive system slows, the immune system weakens. And somewhere beneath all of this, the person forgets what it feels like to be at ease. Modern neuroscience has discovered that the brain has 2 primary modes: the survival mode and the presence mode. Survival mode is fast, reactive, habitual. Presence mode is slow, reflective, healing. In survival mode, the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, dominates. It sees danger everywhere, even where none exists. In presence mode, the prefrontal cortex takes the lead, allowing clarity, calmness, and emotional regulation. Meditation, even in small doses, strengthens the prefrontal cortex and weakens the amygdala. In simple words, meditation teaches the brain how to stop aging itself. In ancient monasteries, monks were taught a way of seeing the mind that modern psychology now calls meta-awareness. It means watching your thoughts the way you would watch clouds drift through the sky, without getting attached, without chasing them, without fearing them. This simple practice becomes a shield against stress, because it breaks the automatic link between thought and reaction. A stressful thought may arise, but awareness gently interrupts the chain reaction. The hormones do not surge. The muscles do not tense. The breath does not tighten. The body remains in the healing state. Every such moment becomes an act of biological protection. Imagine two people experiencing the same stressful situation: losing a job, ending a relationship, receiving difficult news. One person reacts instantly, spiraling into fear and panic. The other pauses, breathes, and observes the rising thoughts with gentle curiosity. The situation is the same, but the inner response is different, and that difference determines how much biological harm the event will cause. The Buddha described this beautifully with the analogy of two arrows. The first arrow is the event itself, unavoidable, unpredictable, often painful. The second arrow is the mental reaction: fear, resistance, worry, anger, overthinking. You cannot avoid the first arrow, but the second arrow is optional. Modern biology agrees. The first arrow may cause a moment of stress. The second arrow causes months, sometimes years of cellular damage. Think of your nervous system as a river. When stress dominates, the river becomes turbulent, filled with waves and foam, crashing against its own banks. When calmness returns, the water becomes smooth again. But unlike water, your body cannot return to stillness instantly. It needs time. It needs breath. It needs awareness. And when you offer these things consistently, even in small doses, the body begins to heal at a profound level. One of the most surprising scientific findings of the past decade is that meditation increases the activity of telomeres, the enzyme that rebuilds telomeres, the protective caps on your DNA. In other words, inner peace repairs your cells. Compassion also does this. Gratitude does this. Gentle breathing does this. It is almost poetic. The qualities of the heart are also the medicine for the body. And yet, most people live in a constant loop of self-criticism, fear, insecurity, and mental noise. They age not because time is passing, but because peace is missing. This is why spiritual practice is not a luxury. It is nourishment. It is maintenance. It is biological self-care. The more you understand this connection, the clearer it becomes that aging is not just a physical event. It is a mental story, a story written by the way you breathe, the way you feel, the way you think, the way you respond. Change the story, and the biology follows. This is not spiritual optimism. This is neuroscience meeting ancient wisdom, hand in hand, speaking the same truth. And as this journey continues, you will see how deeply your emotional patterns, your inner narrative, and your hidden wounds shape the way you age, and how they can be transformed. The next part takes you into the emotional body, the subconscious mind, and the healing practices that reverse years of stress-based aging from within. There comes a point in every human life when the body begins telling the truth the mind has been refusing to hear. At first, it whispers through small signals: tired eyes, scattered focus, restless sleep. But when the mind keeps ignoring, the body steps forward like an old guardian, puts a hand on your shoulder and says, "If you won't change your thoughts, I will have to change your biology." And this is where the ancient wisdom of Buddha meets the cutting-edge research of modern science with startling clarity. For centuries, people believed aging was simply a matter of time, something that happens because the number of years keeps rising. But new biological research shows something radically different. You age not because of time. You age because of tension. Not because of birthdays, but because of burdens. Not because of wrinkles, but because of repetitive emotional patterns that quietly carve themselves into your cells. And when Buddha said, "The mind is the forerunner of all states," he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He was describing a biological mechanism that science is only now beginning to understand. Inside your brain, every thought you think is a tiny chemical storm. A peaceful thought softens your muscles, lowers inflammation, and calms the heart. But a fearful thought tightens the jaw, stiffens the spine, inflames the nerves. Imagine a person who wakes up every day thinking, "What if something goes wrong today?" Their body doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. The heart speeds up, cortisol rises, immune strength drops. Day after day, year after year, this pattern becomes their physiology. Their system begins to operate as if danger is permanent. And when the nervous system believes danger is permanent, aging accelerates like a fire consuming dry wood. Buddha taught something astonishingly similar. He said suffering doesn't come from life. It comes from the stories we tell ourselves about life. Modern psychology calls this cognitive reactivity. Buddhist psychology calls it mental fabrication. Biology calls it allostatic load. But they all point to one truth. You don't age because you're growing old. You age because you're constantly fighting the world inside your mind. There's a powerful image monks use to explain this. Imagine a man holding two heavy buckets of water. He tries to walk, but the weight slows him down. He tries to breathe, but the load presses on his chest. He tries to enjoy life, but he is too exhausted to look around. Then suddenly someone asks him, "Why don't you put the buckets down?" And the man answers, "Because I forgot I was holding them." Most people today are just like that man. They do not know they are carrying anger from 10 years ago. They do not realize they are holding guilt from mistakes long forgiven. They do not see that the fear they carry is not their fear anymore. It's simply an echo that never faded. Science has discovered something remarkable here. Emotions that are not processed are stored in the body. They remain like imprints in the nervous system. Trauma becomes tension, anxiety becomes acidity, worry becomes inflammation. Unspoken grief sits inside the chest like a stone. And even when the moment has passed, the body continues responding as if the danger is still present. But why does this happen? Because the brain does not age according to time. It ages according to repetition. If you keep repeating the same emotional reaction every day, anger, jealousy, insecurity, fear, your brain treats these patterns as important and strengthens them. Neurons that fire together, wire together. It is astonishingly simple and frighteningly powerful. A single fearful experience can create a memory, but 1,000 repeated fearful thoughts can create a personality. And personality shapes biology. Buddha captured this with startling precision when he said the mind creates the world, not because the world changes, but because the one who perceives it does. If your mind is restless, the world looks dangerous. If your mind is peaceful, the world looks supportive. If your mind is angry, every face becomes an enemy. But if your mind is calm, every moment becomes a possibility. There is a well-known study from Harvard where two groups of men in their late 70s were placed in two different environments. One group was surrounded by objects from their current age, modern furniture, modern news, modern gadgets. The second group was placed in a recreated environment from 20 years earlier. Old magazines, old radio shows, old photos, even clothing styles from that era. Within just 5 days, the second group began showing noticeable improvements. Better posture, sharper memory, stronger grip, reduced inflammation. Their biology responded to the younger mental environment. Essentially, when their mind believed they were younger, their body agreed. This is exactly what Buddha meant when he described the power of perception. The mind is not a mirror, it is a sculptor. It does not simply reflect reality, it shapes it, and your cells obey the shape of your thoughts more than the shape of your age. But here comes the most fascinating part. Negative thoughts age you faster, not because of the thought itself, but because of what the thought triggers. Reactivity. When you worry, your muscles tighten. When they tighten, your breathing becomes shallow. When breathing becomes shallow, oxygen drops. When oxygen drops, inflammation rises. When inflammation rises, your cellular repair slows. And when repair slows, aging accelerates. But if you pause in the moment of reactivity, if you simply breathe and observe without fighting, you break the entire chain. This is why monks often say, one moment of awareness can save you 10 years of aging. Modern neuroscience explains this through something called top-down regulation. When you bring conscious awareness to a stressful moment, your prefrontal cortex, the most evolved part of your brain, quietly steps in and whispers to the fear circuits, "Stand down, we are safe." And in less than a second, the amygdala reduces its alarm. Cortisol falls, inflammation reduces, the heart rate stabilizes, the aging process slows, and all of this happens because of a single conscious breath. Buddha knew this long before science could measure it. That's why breath meditation isn't just spiritual, it's biological. It's pure nervous system training. But modern life has created a different kind of breathing. Small, shallow, hurried breaths. And the body interprets this as threat. When you take small, rapid breaths, your brain assumes danger is near. When this becomes a habit, the body lives in a constant micro-panic without you realizing it. This is why chronic stress feels normal, but peace feels unusual. People say, "I can't sit still. I can't sleep peacefully. I can't stop overthinking." They believe this is personality. It is not personality. It is physiology struggling under the weight of long-term stress. Buddha offered a simple antidote: pause, breathe, and watch. Not because it solves the problem, but because it resets the biology that is making the problem bigger. When you catch a thought before it becomes a reaction, you save your body from a chain of stress responses that could last hours or even days. Meditation is not sitting silently. Meditation is breaking the cycle of biological aging that stress accelerates. And what about people who look older than their age? It is rarely because of the years. It is almost always because of the inner storms, the silent frustrations, the suppressed anger, the unexpressed fears. These emotions create oxidative stress, a cellular rusting that accelerates aging. But here's the breakthrough. Oxidative stress reduces dramatically when you practice mindful observation. Just watching your emotions instead of absorbing them changes the chemistry of your entire system. Buddha described this as seeing the river without being swept away. The water flows, but you remain unmoved on the shore. Thoughts flow, but you do not chase them. Emotions arise, but you do not become them. And when the mind stops fighting the world inside stops damaging the body. There is a beautiful truth hidden in this. You do not need to remove negative thoughts to heal. You only need to remove your attachment to them. The thought is not the problem. The clinging is. The fear is not the problem. The identity is. The emotion is not the problem. The repetition is. If you allow thoughts to come and go like clouds passing across a vast sky, your body will follow the sky, not the clouds. This is the science of non-reactive awareness, and this is where Buddhist wisdom and modern biology hold hands and speak in one voice. If you change your relationship with your thoughts, you change your destiny. You change your health. You change your aging. You change the very timeline of your life. And slowly, a realization emerges. You were never aging because of time. You were aging because you stopped living. You stopped breathing deeply. You stopped forgiving. You stopped letting go. You stopped trusting the rhythm of life. You stopped hearing the silence inside you. But the moment you return to yourself, the moment you breathe consciously, observe calmly, and let go courageously, your biology begins to reverse its exhaustion. The nervous system softens, the heart lightens, the face relaxes, the body begins to regenerate like a plant receiving water after a long drought. And perhaps that is the greatest miracle hidden in Buddha's teachings. He showed the world that aging is not the accumulation of years, but the accumulation of unnecessary suffering. Remove the suffering, and the years lose their weight. Remove the burden, and the body finds its youth again. Remove the fear, and the soul begins to glow. The mind is not a clock, it is a compass, and the direction it points determines whether you age or whether you awaken. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when they finally understand that healing was never about adding something new to life. It was always about removing the noise that was blocking the natural intelligence of the body. The mind was designed to heal. The body was designed to repair. The nervous system was designed to return to balance. But somewhere along the way, we began to live in a world that constantly pulls us out of our natural rhythm. Too much information, too much comparison, too much thinking, too much fear. And slowly, the mind that was supposed to be your friend quietly becomes a weight you carry everywhere. The deeper you go into Buddha's teachings, the more you realize he wasn't asking people to believe anything. He was asking them to understand how their inner world operates. He was teaching psychology thousands of years before the word psychology existed. And now, as modern science unlocks the brain's secrets with machines and microscopes, it keeps discovering what Buddha revealed through silence and observation. Your thoughts do not just pass through your mind, they pass through your bloodstream, they color your hormones, they instruct your immune system, they shape the expression of your genes. This means every emotion you allow to live inside you becomes a message to your cells. Chronic anger says, prepare for battle. Chronic fear says, life is unsafe. Chronic guilt says, you are unworthy. Chronic resentment says, nothing will ever be enough. And the body, loyal and unquestioning, obeys these instructions. The tragedy is not that people think negative thoughts. The tragedy is that people assume these thoughts are theirs. A thought is just a cloud drifting across your inner sky. But people build their lives around clouds. They allow a single moment of fear to define the next 10 years of their decisions. They allow one experience of rejection to become their identity. They allow one mistake from their past to age their present. But what happens when you finally step back and look at your thoughts from a distance? When you observe them the way a mountain observes the weather, changing, passing, never permanent, something extraordinary happens. The thought loses its power. The emotion loses its sharpness. The fear loses its authority. And the body, which had been fighting invisible battles for years, begins to soften. Shoulders relax. Breathing deepens. Digestion improves. Immunity strengthens. Sleep becomes deeper. Skin begins to glow. Eyes regain their spark. All because one thing changed: the relationship between you and your thoughts. Western science calls this neuroplasticity. Buddha called it liberation. Both are speaking about the same phenomenon. When you stop reacting to your thoughts, your brain rewires itself. The old neural pathways, fear, worry, self-doubt, begin to fade. New pathways, calmness, clarity, resilience, begin to grow, and the body responds with younger biology. You return to your natural state, which is not stress. It is not confusion. It is not fear. Your natural state is spacious, calm, and intelligent. People believe enlightenment is something mystical or distant. But in reality, enlightenment begins with one simple moment, when you realize you are not your thoughts. That tiny separation, just a breath of distance, is the seed of a new life. From that seed grows a mind that no longer punishes itself, a heart that no longer breaks under pressure, and a body that no longer ages prematurely. Science has a term for people who live with this inner spaciousness: low allostatic load. Their bodies show less inflammation. Their telomeres, the protective caps on DNA, shorten more slowly. Their heart rate variability becomes healthier. Their brain shows more coherence. But these are just scientific measurements of something deeply spiritual. A person who has learned how to live without fighting themselves. And this brings us to the most profound truth in this journey. Aging is not the enemy. Resistance is. When you resist your emotions, you age. When you resist your past, you age. When you resist change, you age. When you resist your body, you age. But when you welcome life as it is, moment by moment, something magical happens. The resistance dissolves. The inner storms settle. The body breathes again. And in that breath, life enters you with full force. Buddha taught that peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is the absence of inner warfare. And when the inner war stops, your biology begins to rebuild the damage. The heart sends calm signals to the brain. The brain sends safe signals to the organs. Hormones find balance. The immune system becomes intelligent again. Cells begin to repair at a deeper level. You feel lighter not because life changed, but because the weight inside you finally fell away. There is a beautiful phenomenon scientists are studying now: spontaneous remission. People healing from chronic pain, inflammation, even long-standing diseases simply through deep emotional release and mental quieting. Most doctors still struggle to explain it, but Buddhist psychology explains it clearly. When the inner knots dissolve, energy flows again. You stop leaking energy into fear, anger, resistance, and self-judgment, and that freed energy goes into repair, regeneration, and restoration. Imagine a river blocked by stones for years. The water becomes still, stagnant, heavy, but remove even one big stone, and the river comes alive again. Your mind is that river. Your negative thought patterns are the stones. Remove the stones, not through force, but through understanding, and your inner river begins to flow again. And within that flow is your youth, your vitality, your clarity. The modern world is filled with people who look alive but feel exhausted. Their spirit is dim, their breath is tight, their reactions are automatic. Their lives feel repetitive, not because they are weak, but because they have forgotten how to return to themselves. They have forgotten the ancient art of simply sitting, breathing, observing, and letting the mind settle into its natural stillness. But the moment you return, even for 5 minutes a day, your system begins to recalibrate. You reconnect with the silence underneath your thoughts. You reconnect with the space inside your chest that has nothing to do with your past or your fears. You reconnect with the peace that was never lost, only buried under noise. And slowly, you begin to understand something astonishing. The younger version of you is not behind you. It is inside you, waiting. The spark you lost is not gone. It is simply covered. The energy you once had is not missing. It is simply misdirected. And the wisdom you are seeking is not external. It is your own nature, finally waking up. Aging gracefully is not about denying age. It's about refusing to carry what ages you. When you release resentment, you look younger. When you forgive, your face softens. When you let go of guilt, your spine lifts. When you breathe deeply, your energy returns. When you stop forcing life, your body stops fighting life. And that is when the miracle happens. The mind and body finally align. There is a line from the Dhammapada that captures the heart of everything we have explored. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. But modern science adds one more sentence. What you become, your cells follow. If your thoughts are heavy, your biology becomes heavy. If your thoughts are fearful, your biology becomes defensive. If your thoughts are peaceful, your biology becomes harmonious. If your thoughts are spacious, your biology becomes youthful. And so the deepest truth reveals itself. Your thoughts have been aging you, but they can also unage you. Your mind has been tightening your body, but it can also free it. Your beliefs have been limiting your biology, but they can also expand it. You are not a prisoner of your past. You are not a prisoner of your age. You are not a prisoner of your patterns. You are the witness, the one who sees, the one who can choose again. And maybe tonight, that choice begins. The choice to breathe instead of react. The choice to observe instead of absorb. The choice to release instead of resist. The choice to live instead of age. Because the moment you stop believing every thought that passes through your mind is the moment you begin to rewrite the story of your body.